Welcome to another episode of In My Own Words. I'm your host, Cory Thames. Let's fast forward a little, right? 2016 was a big year for you. In March of that year, the mayor tapped you to be the director of Legislative Counsel and Government Affairs, basically, which is a huge role, right? And you're basically responsible for shepherding his legislative agenda at the city, state, federal levels, which is a huge task in itself, right? And a lot of personalities, let me say, to navigate.
And I was 29, I think.
Yes. It's a multi-pronged question. One, talk to me about like stepping into that role. And you just said you're 29, right? Young, Latina. You're stepping into spaces that aren't always representative of folks that look like you and I. And so
weren't really built for us either.
Exactly. And I know it's something I still struggle with and have to, give myself a pep talk from time to time. That imposter syndrome of it's very easy to go into a space and kind of like withdraw because of the experience that are at the table or, the presumed power that's sitting at the table. And so talk to me about stepping into that role and how you kind of were able to navigate it confidently, being so young in a space that oftentimes is male dominated. And you have to navigate not only the personalities of the administration, but you also have to navigate every elected official at every level of government.
Oh, yes. That was the worst job I've ever had. It was the hardest. It was hard because a couple of reasons. So right before I came back to work for that administration, I got an opportunity to run Senator Durbin's U.S. Senate seat. And I was 28 and I had a $10 million budget, and that was a huge job, 30 people. Mm-hmm. And something that Durbin did for me that helped my confidence, and I hope I can do this for others moving forward, but he gave me room to lead. He trusted my judgment on a couple key hires. And when I was in a room once, I put together the whole strategy for this Democratic coordinated campaign. Yeah. And I had to meet with the governor, with the Speaker of the House, with the Senate President, and Senator Durbin in a closed meeting. And everyone brought one staffer, and I was the only woman in the room. And thankfully, Ron Holmes was with me, so I had one other person of color. And the best thing that Senator Durbin did was when it was time to lead the meeting, he said, "Anna, lead the meeting. Like, go ahead."
I love that.
And he empowered me, and I don't think he realized what he did at the moment. He showed that I was a leader, that he trusted me, and he showed that he had confidence in me in that meeting, which then gave me confidence to say, oh, I do belong at this table. Mm-hmm. So when I showed up for the ledge director, I still felt more empowered. I had just came off this big win of the race. And, I felt this time around I could use my voice. And I had some allies there that helped raise my voice and empower me and second me like, oh, Anna has a great point, or we should listen to Anna. Mm-hmm. And having those allies are really important. And then those were some men allies that validated me. Mm-hmm. And that helped. But what was really hard at that time was there was so much legislation coming in. It was kind of a tumultuous time. The 2016 campaign was happening. And so I had to put together like ride share and house share ordinances. We've never really regulated the technology before, so I had to do that. And then they were trying to do a $1 billion project on the red and purple line modernization that we had to get aligned up before President Obama left in time. And so there were just so many, the pensions, we had to override a Republican governor. And with Victoria Watkins, another wonderful female that I worked with, we were in our heels running over the Capitol trying to override him. We were the first people to ever override that governor for a pension bill, which is great. And when CPS was like going into flames, we had to pass an education bill. So there was a lot of great wins, but it was really, really hard. It was very testing of your ability to bring it all in, to prioritize, to lead. But thank God I had some amazing allies there that helped me shine.
Okay. Later that same year, you were tapped to be city clerk of Chicago.
Yes.
And the former city clerk went on to be the Illinois comptroller. And there were, it's very public, right? There was this process that was going on, and people were throwing the name in the hats to be appointed as city clerk. Talk to me about, one, your process, and two, what initially got you interested in being city clerk?
Well, first of all, I wasn't interested. I was kind of leading the process. I was like trying to find the names, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah.
And it was actually a friend of mine who was in my office that day, and he's like, "Why don't you think about this? You'd be great." And I went home that night and I talked to Riyadh, and I'm like, and he'll kill me for saying this. He's like, never say this publicly ever again. But I did ask. I was like, am I even qualified? He's like, of course. Have you seen the other people that have no qualifications throwing their name in? It's like, don't ever say that again. Of course you're qualified to do this. Of course you, like, look at all the other things you've done. But that's something that people like people of color and women and, you grow up low income or middle class, you sometimes don't believe you do belong there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that moment. And so what really fired me up was that in 2016, Hillary Clinton lost as well.
Yeah.
And Trump was coming into office. And there was a wave of women that were mad as hell and were going to step up into leadership positions. And Riyadh said, you push women all the time. You're pushing them to lead, and you need to do it yourself. And so that's really what prompted me to raise my hand. And then I did raise my hand, and then I did get picked, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing now? And I have loved this job. Yeah. I have loved public service. I have loved the privilege and opportunity of the platform that I was able to build with so many community members and organizations and my team. I love that I've been intentional about my hiring and have had so many diverse talent and women that I've been able to feed into and build up, and then they've gone on to do other great things. And I love that I've learned how to lead authentically to me, because I have worked for so many men that at first when I came into office, I was so shell-shocked about leadership because I was trying to lead like the men that I saw. And it took some time and some therapy and some great coaches and friends to help me develop my own leadership style that was authentic to me. Mm-hmm. And so this has been one of the best jobs I've ever had.
Perfect. So one of the things that you talked about that kind of fired you up to throw your name in the hat was Hillary Clinton's loss. And so often we hear about these Instagrammable moments, right? You hear about the successes and the accolades, but you don't always hear about the failures and the struggles, right? And you're coming off of, as you said earlier, a very public loss going for Secretary of State. And you only had a split second to be able to, bounce back and then jump right back into re-election mode
it was the time
for city clerk, So one, how did you stay motivated during that time? And, especially it being public and, of course, the whisper campaigns and all of that people like to say and all of that. So how did you stay motivated and ultimately what made you decide to hop back in?
Well, before I answer that question, one thing I want to plug, because my team will yell at me if I don't. When I became clerk, this is also kind of a failure and then stepping back up, City Keep program.
Yeah.
That was also very exciting to do my first year because when Trump came in, there were so many undocumented communities, immigrant communities, and just other marginalized communities that were scared about what was going to happen. And so creating the City Key, which is a government ID, and it's a 4-in-1. It's a government ID, a library card, transit card, prescription discount card, and it's free. Mm-hmm. You go to shycityclerk.com to get one. But one of the things that was the hardest about that, and also a learning moment for me, is that not everyone in city council was excited about it and thought it was only for some communities, not others.
Yeah.
And I remember going to my first budget hearing, my first year in office. And again, I'm like 30 years old. And it was a 4-hour budget hearing. I think you were there.
I was going to say, I remember.
You were there. And it was so intense. And the questioning was so intense. And there was this fracture between the Latino caucus and the Black caucus about what it meant. And it was really disheartening to see. But we stayed the course. Mm-hmm. We did the program anyway. And I left budget and went and cried at home. Not going to lie. But we picked ourselves up and we were like, we're going to get this right because the communities are counting on us and they want it and they helped us build it. And when we launched it, we had 400 people show up the first day. Mm-hmm. And it's been such a success the last 4 years. In fact, those aldermen that voted against it and didn't want it stood up on the floor asking for more money and saying how much it's a great program.
Yeah.
And so I just want to also put that lesson in for those listening is that even though do what's right and what feels right and what you should be doing and why you're there, even against the political pressures or the haters. Because as long as you're doing what's right and for the good of others, it's going to work out. And it may be a longer process and you may not see the fruits of that for years to come, but just stay towards that. And that's what I'll say about this race too. When I lost, it was heartbreak. It was like, I don't, no one runs to lose.
Right.
But I also had the best time doing it and no regrets. I'm so happy that I did it. And to those listening, you have to take those big risks for the big rewards. And you also take big risks to put yourself out of your comfort zone for that growth. I had so much growth and learning. And I had so many new people that I met that in some really exciting moments, like Senator Tammy Duckworth endorsed me and doing a rally together with so many women, which was huge. And voting with Secretary White, the first time he ever early voted in 60 years. And we voted on his birthday together. And sometimes took this photo where I'm in the booth and I have high heels and my pink suit on and he has like tie. And it's really cool to see like the difference. Yeah. And so I was disappointed. I felt like I let people down. I felt like maybe I could have, should have. That's when it happens, they attack you. But, going kind of into a reflective mode, finding gratitude, taking some time to think about, where God wanted to place me. And so I felt like I wasn't done with public service. I felt like it's not about the title, it's about the work. And for me, it was always about the work and helping others, maybe at a larger scale than just citywide. And so I picked myself back up, and it's really humbling to do fundraising calls again after you just asked for people to help you raise $2 million, and then you got to ask them again to raise for city clerk. But you know what I found was that people were so generous, and they were so happy that I was running again, and hopeful. And there was this young Latina that I met from Highland Park, Stephanie Diaz, who's 16. And she wrote me this beautiful letter about what it meant for me to be on that stage, on that platform, to see me running for statewide office and how it inspired her to get involved in her local politics. And now she's part of Students Demand Action. And she went down to Springfield for the assault ban weapon and spoke out about that. She went to D.C. and spoke out about that. And for me, it's all worth it. Yeah. It's worth it for the Stephanies, for the Corys, for my daughter, to see me be brave and know that failure did not break me. Because I told myself that this campaign and political stuff will not break me. It will not break my marriage. And that as much as I love to do it, I have to make sure I take care of myself, which I have. Yeah. So I'm reclaiming my time and my joy. And I am connecting with friends and family I haven't seen in a long time. Yeah. I'm, putting my efforts into things that energize me. I was with Central Romero yesterday doing a coat drive for the new arrivals coming in. I did this Women of Worth event for women who have been helping the new migrants to make sure they're taking care of themselves and talking about self-care and mental health. And so I'm really excited. I'm going to launch my own podcast, which you can come. Okay. About resilience. I look forward to being invited. Yes, you can. So, I hope that people take those big risks. And I hope people saw me doing this as not a deterrence not to get in, but go into the arena and fight for that space. And even if you don't win the first time, doesn't mean that you're not going to be ready for the next time that comes. It's so crazy. We were just talking about Stephanie Diaz, right? And I think we are navigating our lives and our careers, and we don't even always see how many people are watching. Yes. And I have so many people that come up to me and they're like, Cory, we're watching you. You're inspiring us. And I'm just like, I'm just trying to figure it out, right? You're like, what? But I think that people recognize authentic leadership. They recognize people that have really grinded and hustled and put in the work. And when they see folks like you or folks like me that we're making moves and we're doing all of these things, it is inspiring for those folks coming behind it. So when I have conversations around, which is actually going to lead into my next question about what advice
would you give to somebody that's younger? I think to your point that you just made, taking the risk and stepping into the rooms, even in those moments where you feel like, you have a little bit of imposter syndrome or you have some doubts about yourself because your voice is so critical. And when you're stepping into these spaces that aren't reflective of Chicago or Illinois more broadly, don't always have people of color sitting at the table, your voice is so important because you're not only just speaking for you and your experiences, but you're speaking for communities across the city, communities across the state. And so what advice would you give to young folks that are interested in public office, that may be a little nervous, may even, want to run for office, elected office one day? What advice would you give to them?
Well, my first advice is find your own hype squad.
Mm-hmm.
Find your people. Because when you're ready to go into the arena, you're kind of going into battle.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to have a clear understanding of like who you are and your values and what matters to you. And don't compromise those. So, hold on to it. It's not worth winning an election if you have to compromise your values.
Absolutely.
And I'm really proud of myself that I can look myself in the mirror and be proud of what I did and the campaign I ran. And I also think like having people like you're an encourager, and I have so many women in my life that are encouragers that on tough days would send me a text message, would call, we've done dinners, coffees to like build you up. Yeah. Like you want to, you can't always believe your hype, but you can't always believe the haters either.
Yeah.
You just got to, it's a middle ground. So my advice first is find your people because that will help you in those seasons that are rough, where the storms are happening, the self-doubt's happening, the feeling like you don't belong is happening, because those seasons will pass and they will, and things will get better, and we don't always believe it, but it will. Time heals so much. But as young people, sometimes we want things right now. And you really have to, one, find that group that's going to keep you grounded. Two, take those big risks, but also stay grounded in gratitude for the present. I think for a lot of my life, I hustled hard. I hustled hard and I put blinders on. And
Same.
I, even to the extent of my own family, I remember Riyadh when I was early on in the clerk race, he came, we were talking and he's like, my husband, and he's like, look, you give everything to everyone else. And when you come home, there's nothing left for me. Yeah. Like he was getting the worst of me instead of the best of me. And that is someone, I love. And my daughter's someone I love. And so they should be getting the best of me, not just the whole other world. So instead of saving the whole world, which I sometimes think I have to do.
Same.
Because sometimes I have this complex of like, I am not enough. So therefore, I'm not doing enough for my friends. I'm not doing enough for my family. I'm not doing enough for my team at the office. And then when you do that, you stretch yourself so thin that you burn out or you're exhausted. Yeah. So you have to now as a young person, get your priorities straight and realize that you might not be able to do everything, and you don't have to go straight big. Maybe start, small. Michelle Obama said this in her book, like sometimes it's right in your lap, and starting small has those large ripple effects. Yeah. So just don't overwhelm yourself and start small. And my last piece of advice is sometimes as young people and from diverse communities, we don't always see people that look like us in these powerful places. So if you see someone that inspires you, you're speaking at an event or maybe on this podcast, reach out. Yeah. Reach out and ask them, hey, could I get coffee? Could I do a 15-minute call, like just a phone call with you or Zoom? And 9 out of 10 times they're going to say yes because someone else did that for us. Yeah. And they're going to pay it forward.
That was one of the first things you told me when I was a fellow in the mayor's office was that ask them for coffee. 9 times out of 10 times, they're going to say yes.
And then you're building a network.
Yeah.
A network is so important. And if you grew up first-generation college students like us, you didn't have a network when you graduated. You didn't have mom or dad to call up so-and-so, business friend and get you an internship. No.
My mom would be like, who?
Yeah, exactly. and plus, they probably wouldn't even do it if they knew. Like, no, this is your life. You got to figure it out yourself. So that network you're building and seeking mentorship, like that's really important. And if you don't ask, the worst thing they can say is no.
Absolutely.
But I guarantee
you're going to be
they're
in the
not.
same position that you're in before.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my 3 pieces of advice for young people.
Last question is, Who is Anna Valencia in your own words?
That's so deep.
I know.
Well, I think if my friends described me, I think they would say that I'm very kind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a loving spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a warrior woman.
Yes.
I'm a warrior, and I'm a warrior for my people.
Yeah.
Especially my little one. So don't mess with me. Don't mistake kindness for weakness.
Absolutely.
People tend to do that. Saying. And I am a servant of God. Like, I really want to use 23 as a place to hear where God is calling me, to be able to serve out uplifting communities that are often looked over, and empowering those communities and giving them the tools they need to empower themselves. Because often we always say, like, it's top-down approach. And I like to build policies from the ground up. That's why we did city keys and fines and fees reform, and making sure women and girls issues, the Pink New Deal, and all the things that we're working on, city council modernization, first time we're ever doing electronic voting in the city, and the aldermen hated me.
It's crazy to watch.
But now you can see how your aldermen vote. It's about openness. It's about accessibility to government. It's about
all of that.
It's about people being civically engaged with their government, and our young people being able to see what's going on and knowing that they too could be a city council member or a mayor or city clerk. And so I want to follow God's direction this year, and where to plant me to be able to do the most good.
Well, let me say this. It has been, one, an honor being your friend.
Oh, thank you.
But it has been amazing to watch your journey and how intentional you are about bringing others into that journey. So thank you for coming, and thank you for talking about your story today.
Well, thank you. I'm going into my 38th year. My birthday is Monday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And again, to the young people listening, don't fret, because it does take time to get where you and I are sitting. I used to think I was young at 38, but now, whoo.
you don't bounce back as quick.
No, you don't bounce back quick.
I said the same thing the other day.
And you're not as hip. I'm like, what artist am I going to say? So I am so honored to be your guest. Thank you for sharing my story.
Yes.
Allowing me to share it in my own words. And I appreciate you, and I'm excited to see what this year's going to bring for you too.
Same. Thank you for joining In My Own Words.